the time starts.
So typically Shelby puts the screen up, the blue screen up.
Oh, yes, I forgot
Well,
all
I mean,
about
I'll
that.
do it whenever you're ready for me to go live.
Okay, I will. I should be ready before the time actually starts. So I forgot that Shelby did that.
She has to give me all kinds of clues, let me tell you. But we got a couple of minutes still, so we're good.
Yeah. Well, there's Commissioner Levin. And okay, so I am all ready for you as soon as it becomes 5:30. So we just got a few minutes to wait, and I think we're just missing one person now, just Commissioner Slater.
Correct.
And we'll have everyone who we're expecting to be here.
Okay, welcome everybody to the June 7th, 2022 meeting of the Salem Planning Commission. Zachary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Augustine?
Here.
Commissioner Ikes?
Here.
Commissioner Fott?
Here.
Commissioner Griggs?
Here.
Commissioner Heller?
Here.
Commissioner Levin?
Here.
Commissioner Slater is currently absent, and Commissioner Goebel is also absent. We expect Commissioner Slater, so I'll let you know when they arrive, but otherwise we have established quorum.
Great. And Commissioner Goebel is absent, excused, right? So,
yes.
Got it. Public comment item 3, we don't have anybody signed up for that section. Moving to the consent calendar, Commissioner Levin, do you have a motion?
I most certainly do. I have reviewed the draft minutes of the May 17th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting and recommend adoption and enter into the record.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. I need a second. Is there a willing second? Commissioner Heller?
I'll second.
I thought I heard you. So we have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. Not seeing any eager hands. Zachary, would you please call the roll, signify by saying aye if you're in favor of the motion, nay if you are opposed.
Commissioner Augustine?
Aye.
Commissioner Ikes?
Aye.
Commissioner Fott?
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs?
Aye.
Commissioner Heller?
Aye.
Commissioner Levin?
Aye.
Motion passed. Thank you. Moving on to public hearings, item 5.1, opening a hearing on comprehensive plan change, zone change case CPC-ZC 22-02 for 4375 Rickey Street. Before I have Zachary read the statement of criteria, are there any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest to declare? Seeing none. Zachary, would you please read the statement of criteria?
This is a public hearing to consider a comprehensive plan change and zone change, case number CPC-ZC 22-02 for property located at 4375 Rickey Street Southeast. The criteria applicable to this application are found in Salem Revised Code, SRC Chapters 64.025E2, Comprehensive Plan Map Amendments, and 625.005E1, Quasi-Judicial Zone Change. Failure to raise an issue prior to the close of the public hearing with statements or evidence sufficient to afford the Planning Commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA, on that issue. A similar failure to raise constitutional issues related to proposed conditions of approval precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony. The Planning Commission will then either continue the public hearing or leave the record open for at least 7 days.
Thank you, Zachary. Mr. Bishop, you're up.
Good evening, President Griggs, members of the Planning Commission. Bryce Bishop with the City of Salem Planning Department, and I'm here tonight to present the staff report for the proposed comprehensive plan change and zone change before you this evening. It's case number CPC-ZC 2202, as Zach mentioned, and it's for property located at 4375 Rickey Street, Southeast. So in terms of a little background of the proposal, it's a consolidated application for a minor comprehensive plan amendment to change the comprehensive plan map designation of the property from single family residential to multiple family residential, with a concurrent zone change to also change the zoning from single family residential to multifamily residential RM2. The applicant's reason for the request is stated in the written statement is because the existing improvement of the site is a residential care facility that was approved back in 2000 as a specific conditional use in the RS zone, and it provides housing for individuals with developmental disabilities. Based on the changing nature of the licensing requirements and the needs of the residents, they're looking to convert the existing residential care facility that has more of a group living type of arrangement to individual independent dwelling units, where the individuals who reside in the development who are still individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but they can receive the care in their own home rather than a group setting. So in terms of a couple application processing notes, the applicant attended the meeting of the Southeast Mill Creek Association on May 10th as required under the code. And then because this is a comp plan and a zone change, there is no state mandated 120-day deadline for the application. So in terms of where the subject property is located at 4375 Rickey Street, in context for the surrounding area, the subject property, if you can see on the screen here, that it's noted with the white asterisk in the orange, outline property. It's located on the north side of Rickey Street, which is a minor arterial street under the Salem Transportation System Plan. It is located on the boundary of the city limits. And so if you see the red dash line here, that is the city limits line. So everything to the south of the red line here and everything to the west of the red line, dash red line, is in the city. Everything to the north and then east off to the right of the screen is in Marion County. The property is within close proximity to neighborhood services. As you can see here, you have the shopping center used to be Shopco. Now it's a Coastal Farm and Ranch, in the old Shopco space. And then there's a Winco grocery store, a gas station, and various other restaurants and commercial services, to the west. And then, on the far left-hand side of the screen is Lancaster Drive, northeast. And then across the street, from the property is Helk Middle School. So the property is definitely in an area where it's kind of characterized by a transition from from commercial to residential use. And it's a bit busy, classified street and close to services. In terms of the comprehensive plan map designation for the property is currently single family residential right here. And to the west, you see a strip of commercially designated land on the north side of Rickey Street. And then to the east of the property, it's single family residential. You have, the large, commercial designation where the shopping, center is, and then community service education where the school is to the south. And then, of course, the residential neighborhood to the north that is within Marion County. And so they're proposing to change the designation from single family residential to multifamily residential, though it might look odd as a little kind of a spot zoning of multifamily residential there. As indicated in the staff report, it's a logical transition where you have commercial, designated land to the west, single family land to the east, and then, close to school and services. So this designation kind of provides a transition from along Rickey Street from the commercial designation, which is a higher intensity designation, to the single family designation to the east. In terms of zoning, the property is currently zoned RS, as I indicated. To the west of the property, it's zoned commercial office, and then further to the west of that, it's commercial retail. So as you get closer to Lancaster, the land use pattern on the zoning map becomes more intense. Across the street is Elk Middle School that's zoned PE, public and private educational services, and then you have, of course, shopping center, which is zoned CR, and then in the county, it's zoned single-family residential as well. And they're proposing to change it from single-family residential to RM2. Again, like with the comp plan map, the RM2 designation, though might look a little bit weird, it does provide a transition where you have a higher intensity commercial use in CR, less intensity, commercial use in CO, then to, the higher density, multifamily, and then to single family as you go further to the east. So in terms of the site conditions, the property is 0.58 acres in size. The topography of the property is flat. There are no mapped landslide hazards, susceptibilities points on the site. So there is no need to, to do any geologic assessments or technical reports with the future development or the conversion of the property. As you can see on the screen here, there are, some trees, on the property, a couple larger ones, and then, various other trees that are kind of smaller, that were established, back in 2000 when the facility was first, constructed. There are no mapped wetlands or waterways on the site, and then transit service is available to Ricky Street to the south of the property, and then just a short distance, to the east, there is a transit stop, so it's has convenient access to transit. There is an unimproved public right-of-way that's 15 feet wide that provides a connection from, was intended to provide a connection from Ricky Street to Munkers Avenue or Munkers Street, but that was never constructed. The county, has generally been opposed to those connections in the past, but there is, dedicated right-of-way abutting the eastern side of this property where there is the potential for a future pedestrian connection if it were ever made. If you look to the north, there's people have built their in the county, people have built their accessory structures in the right of way there. So it could be kind of challenging to open that up if it were ever to be opened up, but it does exist. In terms of some, aerial views and to kind of get a context for the property, the subject property is shown here, the facility with the existing parking lot. This is looking, west towards Lancaster. And so you see the school and then, several, undeveloped, commercially zoned and designated properties to the west, the shopping center. And so you get more of a commercial feel as you go to the west. Looking to the east, you have the school again here, and then again it's residential, character as you go to the east. And then here's a couple of pictures of the property itself and then the existing building. Single story structure, accommodating a more group housing type of residential care facility arrangement, and the proposal to change the comp plan and zone to multifamily residential and RM2 will allow the applicants to come in with a subsequent application, a site plan review and a design review application to convert the existing building into 8 independent dwelling units in a multifamily development or a multifamily use configuration. And so as identified in the staff report, it was reviewed for compliance with the comp plan and zone change approval criteria included under Chapter 64 and Chapter 265. As recommended in the report, we feel that the proposed comp plan designation and zoning district are better suited for the property than the existing designation as the applicant has indicated in their statement. This is in part because the site is already developed for a use that's not a single family use. So it is more of a group, living, type of arrangement on the property today. The site, the change to RM2 zoning will allow them to convert to multifamily where it wouldn't be allowed today. And then if they couldn't do that and they wanted to provide a more independent type of housing for the residents here, they would be forced to look elsewhere. The site is located at an area where it's on a busier street, again, a minor arterial that is Ricky Street. It's close to commercial and neighborhood services to the west and the southwest. It's across the street from a school, and it provides a transition from the more intensive commercially designated and zone land to the west to the residential single family designated land and zone land to the east. east. It will add land to the city's multifamily housing supply, and specifically, provide a type of housing for a specific, group of in our community that has, needs, and we have a deficit for, and so that's a good thing. And and it's close to transit, again, easy access, so all of it checks all the boxes in terms of what makes sense for having a higher density residential, designation, in this area. As indicated in the staff report, it then conforms to all the applicable goals of the Salem Comprehensive Plan and the statewide planning goals, and it provides for the logical urbanization of land. There are 3 recommended conditions of approval that we have for the zone change. 2 of them are to kind of address, the previous specific conditional use approval approved in 2000. One of those is to convey land for dedication of right-of-way along Ricky Street to equal a half width of 36 feet. That was a condition of approval of the original specific conditional use, but the right-of-way doesn't appear to have ever been dedicated. So to ensure that that gets done as originally required, and that Ricky Street meets its half width right-of-way requirement under the transportation system plan, we're recommending, that the additional right-of-way be dedicated so it equals 36 feet from the center line on the north half of the street. And again, Ricky's a minor arterial, so there's 72 feet of right-of-way overall required. So the 36 is half of that. So it's about 4 additional feet of right-of-way that would be required to be dedicated along the property to meet that. The second condition concerns access to the property. The previous specific conditional use limited access to the property to only one driveway, and this is because Ricky Street's a minor arterial, and to promote safety and the mobility of traffic and the flow of traffic along that minor arterial street, it was limited to one point of access. Since the zone is changing to a multifamily zone here, and it won't be a single family use, the use will no longer be a conditional use in that zone. So to ensure that that same requirement of only one access be continued, we're recommending that be a condition of the zone change. And then also, in order to comply with goal 12 and the ORARs related to transportation under the state, there's a recommended trip cap of 78 average daily trips, and this is to ensure that the level of traffic generated as a result of the change from single family to multifamily will not exceed the number of trips that would be reasonably anticipated to be generated under the property's development today under the existing single family. So this trip cap just ensures that the number of traffic, the number of traffic trips coming from the site won't exceed what could be achieved today on the property under its existing designation. We sent notice as required under the code to all property owners and tenants within 250 feet of the property, and we didn't receive, and notice was posted on the property and no comments were received. As I mentioned, the applicant went to the SEMCA Neighborhood Association meeting on May 10th, and we also sent notice to the Neighborhood Association, and as of this evening, no comments have been received from the Neighborhood Association. So with that, staff would conclude and recommend that the Planning Commission adopt the facts and findings of the staff report and approve the proposed comprehensive plan map amendment and zone change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bryce. And before we go to questions of you from Commissioner Zachary, did you note that Commissioner Slater did sign in and he heard the whole thing? Because he was
yes.
Okay.
Just for the record, he joined at 5:33.
Perfect. Welcome, Commissioner Slater.
Thank you.
So questions for Bryce from commissioners at this point?
I do have one question.
Mr. Ekus? Yeah.
It's more out of curiosity, but you pointed out what you thought was a logical transition because it goes from commercial to multifamily to single family.
Mm-hmm.
Would it really make any difference if there was some single family on the other side, and if this was more in the middle of the single family, if it went commercial to single family to the zone change for multifamily and then to single, would that really have any impact here?
Well, I think when you look at the context of it's on Ricky Street, it's a busy street with access limitations. If it did go from commercial to single family to multifamily, I guess that probably, I guess in my mind, would not maybe make much of a difference because probably, the best use along that busy corridor close to services might be, not a single family use. So if it were to be changed from, kind of hop skipped over and did multifamily, went over property over to the east, maybe then, that would allow for the property in the middle to come back and sometime in the future and change it over time. But yeah, I think, if it wasn't next to a minor arterial street and kind of in transit and, close to other to services, then, there may be a question of whether or not it's suitable, because it could be in the middle of like a single family residential neighborhood. But, I think the location here makes it, all the properties kind of along that corridor maybe open to maybe potential change.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Egan?
Yeah, thanks. I was, like I said, it was more out of curiosity than anything.
Yeah, I know that we've tried in the past to avoid the patchwork areas on the maps when possible, but in this case, it's perfect. But any other questions of Bryce at this point? We'll have one more opportunity after the applicant. Not seeing any hands raised. We'll move on to the applicant. I think, Brandy, you're going to be speaking. As you know, you have 15 minutes, and if you could state your name and address for the record, that'd be wonderful.
Sure. Good evening. My name's Brandy Dalton. I'm with Multi-Tech Engineering. I'm located at 1155 Southeast 13th Street, Salem, Oregon, 97302. Bryce did a great job, a thorough job. So there's not a ton for me to say because of his great presentation, which I really appreciate. But as Bryce said, our clients have an existing building. So instead of going and finding a different property and developing it or having to move into a new building, they already have this great existing building that they're not going to have to do anything to the exterior of it. It's all going to be interior. They're looking to rezone it from RS to multifamily. It's, as Bryce stated, it's an existing 8-room senior center, and they're going to take those 8 rooms and turn them into 8 individual units for developmentally disabled individuals. This will provide a housing type and help with housing needs for developmentally disabled individuals as well. Bryce did state that. Also, we have read all the conditions of approval, and we're aware that those have to be met per the previous conditional use. So we don't have a problem with those, and we'll work with Bryce on those if this gets approved tonight. My findings are all part of the record, and we believe that we meet all the criteria to warrant approval. So really what we're here for tonight is to answer any questions that you might have that could help get this approved.
Okay. Thank you, Brandy. Questions of the applicant from commissioners? You can use your raise your hand or raise your hand. Commissioner Ekus?
Question. I'm just trying to make sure I understand because we're talking about persons with those disabilities and existing group, basically group situation going into apartments or housing. But reading through, I was unclear about what the situation with the existing residents.
Mm-hmm.
Are these the same ones that are now going to have multifamily housing, or are you going to have, when you do the multifamily housing, what's happening with the people who are there now?
Well, that's actually a great question. And I think that's more of a question for our applicants. And I think Jared, maybe he can answer that.
Jared's got his hand
outside
up.
My territory. Yeah.
Jared, would you mind stating your name and address for the record before you elucidate?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Jared Weekly. I work for Sunny Oaks, and our address is 3276 Commercial Street, Southeast, Salem, Oregon. So the individuals that currently reside there, for the most part, will be the same individuals that will reside in a multifamily dwelling. Currently, it's already set up. It was designed as a residential training facility for people to be able to transition from a group living facility to independent living. And that's how it was built with the original home grant from the city of Salem. So they will continue to live there. Any that choose to transition into a group home with another agency or with our agency have been given the option to do so. And the people who will have the opportunity to move into those, any vacated apartments would also be individuals with developmental disabilities.
Thank you, Jared. Did that
So-
you have a follow-up question, Commissioner?
Well,
Akers?
just to clarify, you got 8 people there and they really have a choice. If they want to continue in a group home, they can they will go to another existing group home facility. If they don't, then they can stay there and occupy one of the multifamily units. Is that correct?
That
That's
is,
correct.
Do you know, do you know what any of them have decided yet, or I assume they've been informed?
yeah, we have been having ongoing meetings with the people who live there for over a year. One individual has already chosen to move into another setting. And we have another person who's on the fence and is nervous about the situation. They're going to give it a shot and see how they do. The transition for us is as much about complying with Oregon administrative rules for DD services as anything else. Larger facilities like the one that we currently occupy are no longer going to be funded under the rate model. Anything larger than 5 beds is not included in that new rate model from DD services. And there is a current shortage of supported living housing, as well as supported living services. And the director of ODDS actually toured the program and they made it clear to us a long time ago that she would prefer to see it as supported living services, since that's essentially what we're doing already.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions for either Jared or Brandy from the commissioners? And I think seeing no hands raised, we're good with that. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
And then Zachary, neighborhood association, we didn't have anybody signed up for that, correct, Zachary?
That is correct. We don't have anyone from the neighborhood association or the public.
Okay, so no other testimony. Any additional questions of staff? And I think we're good with that too. You guys are getting off so easy. So you don't have anything to rebut, so we'll just skip right over that. And is there any request to leave the record open for additional testimony?
No, we waived that.
Yay, thank you. With that, I'll close the hearing and I'll look to Commissioner Levin for a motion.
Yes, Ms. President, I would make a motion that we approve the case number CPC-ZC 22-02 and adopt the facts and findings, including the conditions of approval.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Fott is our second. Discussion on the motion. I think it's a pretty clear-cut case and really meeting the needs of a population that we need to provide housing for. So I'm very excited about it. Any other comments? Okay, Zachary, would you please call the roll, signify by saying aye if you're in favor of the motion to approve, or nay if you are opposed.
Commissioner Augustine,
Aye.
Commissioner Ekis,
Aye.
Commissioner Fott,
Aye.
Commissioner Griggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Heller,
Aye.
Commissioner Levin,
Aye.
and Commissioner Slater.
Aye.
Motion passed. The case is approved. Moving on to item 6, we don't have any special orders of business. We don't have any information reports. We don't have any public signing up to talk about anything. So we are to Lisa's administrator's report. Hey, Lisa.
Hi, everybody. Let's see, we have our Salem public hearing at council on Monday. So we're really excited about that. We have, I know you guys didn't do Myers Farm, that went to council, but we did just get a notice that it's been appealed to LUBA. Some of you had asked me about that case that went a long time at council. Let's see what else we have. I think I told you before that the Fairview Code amendments were appealed to LUBA. Those got dropped. So the Fairview Code amendments that the Planning Commission heard in the UDC packet earlier this year are final now. So that's good. I don't know if Tom had anything to do with that. If so, good job, Tom. And then I sent information, or had Shelby send out information about the climate friendly, equitable communities rulemaking that the state just adopted, CFEC, because planners love their acronyms. CFEC is what people call it. Ian Commissioner Lewin made a face. I've heard worse acronyms, and it is a pretty long title for rulemaking. So they did something that I've never seen done, and it's not something we do here, is they adopted them as temporary rules. There were still some things they wanted to change based on testimony, but they just adopted the entire package as temporary, and then they're going to make small tweaks at their next meeting and then finalize them. They wanted to give cities, I guess, a green light to know that these rules are going to be adopted and to start planning for the work. So, which we have been doing. I think I've mentioned that we were on the committee for the last year working on it. Staff were on the committee. As an overview, just in case you don't remember, these rules come from a directive from the governor that she gave to all of state departments to look at ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so DLCD is looking at the built environment and the transportation, because that's where our emissions come from generally in Salem and in Oregon. The rules cover land use, so a lot of requirements for cities to zone for high density mixed use. We've obviously already have that type of zoning in certain areas. We've done more of it in our Salem, so we'll have to do a little bit more work to meet the rules in the next few years, but we're feeling pretty good about that. There are a lot of rules about transportation plans, so they've adopted a lot of new rules that you have to consider new things when you create a transportation plan or update it. You might remember we do plan to kick off the update to our TSP after our Salem's adopted, so we're planning for that in the next like later this year. So we will be probably one of the first cities to try to tackle the new rules with our update. It's things like prioritizing bike ped, not looking to widen roads as your first kind of alternative or first idea. So things that you would think of for trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But there are rules in there for parking minimums. So the city really has to look at what kind of parking we require, pricing parking, like downtown and on our streets, and a whole bunch of different things for parking. The city has a choice of basically about what it wants to do, kind of pick this path, pick that path. So we're still analyzing that. And at some point we'll be asking the city council, which path do we want to go on? And then we'll do the work based on that direction. And then as the title, tells you, it's also about equitable decision-making and planning. And so they've introduced new requirements for equity analyses to be done when you're doing planning, to look at what kind of impacts you're going to have on communities, underrepresented communities. What impacts have you already had in your planning decisions, and how can you rectify those? So that's something new in the state laws, and something kind of new to us as far as doing an official analysis. So that's something that we'll be tackling as well. So there's a lot of deadlines in the various parts of the rules, as staff tries to figure out. There's all these charts, and there is an ability for the city to present a work plan to DLCD and kind of pick our own timelines for certain parts of the work, and say we're going to do it this way instead of with your timelines, as long as we end up to the same place at the end. So I think that's the path the city's going to take, because we already know we want to do our TSP first. So we'll be trying to put that together in the next few months. And then the state does have money that they're trying to give cities to help with the work, to help with consulting work. And so they have money available now. So they've already been trying to throw the money at us. So we've been trying to work on some scopes that they would hire consultants to help us do some of the outreach and to do some of the technical analysis around climate friendly areas, and analyzing how much housing we have in certain areas, how many jobs in certain areas. And then they're trying to provide technical resources and staff to help with an equity analysis, because again, that's pretty new to most cities doing that work. So it is a huge work task for the next few years for planning and public works staff. But we have been accounting for that in the last year. We've been thinking about projects after our Salem. And you might remember that in Eunice's presentation, we had a little chart of like all the post our Salem projects. And so the TSP, the Parks Master Plan, and the CFEC work, we had already assumed would all start later this year. So we're still on track for that. So you'll hear more about it. You'll be more involved as we get going.
Can you use any of those ODOT dollars to offset the cost of the climate action coordinator? I forget the woman's name. Are you apply it that way?
No, I don't think we are, because you're talking about the position that we hired at the city to do work on the climate action plan. Yeah. And so that's kind of happening in parallel. The city obviously completed a climate action plan last year. Commissioner Griggs was on the task force, and Casey, but I was like, there was someone else, Casey, poor Casey, not here anymore. And then the council has a subcommittee where they're looking at, prioritizing actions out of the climate action plan. And so that has really, it's related, but it's not the same kind of work. So some of it's really focused on city operations, like our fleets and flexible work schedules and that kind of things that the city can control. As far as the climate action plan and prioritizing that. We do expect there to be more federal and state dollars coming to us right through the transportation bill that the president signed recently. And so that money will be tied in some ways to projects that are under this climate friendly and equitable communities umbrella, because that's going to shape our TSP and which projects we get kind of in our TSP, and then the money that we can use on those projects. So a lot of moving parts out there.
Any questions for Lisa on that before she goes on with her report from anybody? Okay, keep going.
Yeah. And then just some updates with the planning division. And I've already talked to Commissioner Slater about this. We just filled a position, a new position in the division, a zoning inspector. So we do have Stephanie, who you all have met, that's our zoning inspector that focuses on the sign code. And now we have this other position that was actually added in our budget right when COVID hit. And so we didn't fill it at first because we wanted to be sure we had the money for this person. And he's taking over zoning inspections because the planners do those today. They get, they show up and somebody called an inspection and they jump in their car and drive out there to check out bike racks and landscaping and parking lot construction and that kind of stuff, which is really hard to manage in their day. And then he's going to be inspecting trees that are planted or preserved during single family construction. We'll be checking for those at final. And then he'll start doing inspections when construction first starts to make sure that trees have the right fencing and are preserved during construction. So he is already a city employee. He came to us from parking services. So he's learning about planning and compliance and all those things. We're really excited to have him.
What's his name?
His name is Roberto.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it's his first week and we haven't worn him out yet.
It's a good sign when they come back.
Yeah. And then, we do have 4 vacancies in a current planner. So I've hired one who's starting in July, and then I'm interviewing more next week. So hopefully we will get staffed back up, but we will have 4 new people out of our 9 current planners. So that's where we're at. That's what we're doing. It's all our Salem and recruitment all the time. So
any questions for Lisa? And then I think our next meeting is.
I do have something.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a request maybe for the next time. I don't know. Shane, Lisa and Shane, are we done with the sign code review, or do we still have another sign code?
Yeah, so we're done with the work sessions, and then we will schedule a public hearing and bring back a new draft, based on the like what we already had, and then the comments from the work session, and then we'll have a hearing on it. We'll do notice, right? So you'll probably get testimony. Based on workload, we're thinking August maybe or September for the hearing. And I know Aaron and Stephanie were meeting with the Realtors Association today to talk about the rules for temporary signs. So they're out doing outreach right now, which then can inform.
Well, I have I guess we call it a request for information, because I'm curious about some things, particularly related to the recent, because we're just ending a period of political signs and the regulations that apply to those. And there seems to me that there's a couple issues that I would like to know more about in terms of the enforcement. One, of course, we've talked about the right of way, and it was my understanding that the new side code enforcer was in charge of making sure there weren't any or enforcing the right of way prohibition.
Yes.
And so I'm curious as to whether or not any signs were in fact removed. And if
Yes.
so,
Oh, yeah. I mean,
how many?
she picks up a truck full every week.
Well, I would be interested in that information. And I think it's helpful to let people know that that was in fact being enforced. The other thing that concerns me, and because it's 3 weeks after the election, I'm driving around and I notice a lot of signs still up. And I know from having worked on campaigns myself that it's it's often difficult for people to pick up signs or to let people know if they have signs, they should be taking them out. There are, however, some very large signs that that are still there. What I've noticed is there are a lot of signs still there, and what concerns me is the continued. As long as they're there, it adds to that visual pollution that we've been trying to avoid. But also, and I'm not, other than the visual pollution, I'm not so concerned about signs from people who lost the election because they're not running in the general. But I have noticed, and this is for both Democratic candidates and Republican candidates, that there are a lot of signs still up from people who would be running in the general. So to the extent that they're still up, they're violating the rules, but they're also gaining an advantage for the general. So I'm wondering what kind of enforcement's anticipated there, and how much do they rely on, and what the process for removing those signs would be. Does it rely on a citizen complaint? You then call a campaign. I'm interested in the enforcement process for signs that remain up after the period of time after the election for which they'd be taken down.
Well, the one thing to remember is we don't generally enforce signs based on the content. So even though it may be for an election that happened or hasn't happened yet, if it meets the number of signs and size of temporary signs that they're allowed to have, I don't think there's any requirement that they take them down between elections or anything.
I think it is. I think they have.
I
can
think
do
there
2
is a
months,
requirement.
twice a year.
See,
2
this is why
months,
you
twice
should
a
have
year.
asked when Aaron and Stephanie were here.
That's why I'm just asking if we could get that information, because I think Shane's right. There is
It's a
there
limit.
is
Well, Shane would
there is
know,
only a
'cause we
period of
sent a
time when
letter,
they're
I
allowed
think.
to be
Yeah.
up. You
Okay.
can only put them up at a certain time, and you can only keep them up for a certain time.
2 months, twice a
2
year.
months. My
Yeah,
Lord.
60
Okay.
days, twice a year. To
Yeah.
Yeah.
accommodate
So
primary.
maybe, I know before, like at the beginning of election season, we sent an email to everybody that was running for office in this area with a flyer of the rules. So maybe the first thing I can do is have Aaron send that and say, now that the election's over, you need to pick up your signs, please refer to these rules. The ones in the right of way, Stephanie, has been taking anyway. Like in the planter strips, she didn't not touch them because it was election season. But the ones on private property, unless they're enormously large and don't meet the sign code, she hasn't been contacting those folks.
Yeah, there are. I'm curious about that sign limitations too, and maybe it's not in the city, but there are a couple of large signs out on Salem Parkway and Verta Lane, I think. But I'm particularly interested in the process for trying to get signs down after the election, because we tolerate, because of elections, a certain amount of visual pollution.
Yeah.
But there's also a concern about candidates who are running in the general keeping their signs up. And
Yep.
as I said, I've noticed both Democratic and Republican candidate signs, and I think either one's not appropriate, but also I know how difficult it is sometimes to for campaigns to keep track of where the signs are or to try and get them down. So I'm just curious about the enforcement process at the end of the sign, temporary political sign period.
Well, we haven't had a code enforcement officer doing signs since 2004. So we're recreating all the processes. So I'm sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, does a citizen, I can understand notifying the campaigns, but then is there a citizen complaint process? You
can complain about anything in the city.
Well, I know, but does that generate a letter that says we've been informed there's a sign that needs to be taken down? You go to the campaign. It generates a case that is assigned to a code compliance officer. It generates a case that is assigned to a code enforcement officer, and then they deal with the case. So usually they'll just drive by, knock on the door. If it's something someone can easily fix, then we don't bother with a letter or anything like that. So, yeah. I think it just does give an advantage to a candidate running in the general who keeps their signs up for a month or two after the election, or even longer if it's not enforced.
Okay, good points.
Yeah, great.
Other questions for Ms. Anderson-Ogilvie? No. Any comments for the good of the order? Oh, we do have a hearing, another meeting on the 21st, right, Lisa, before we go to comments for the good of the order?
Yep, and it looks like we have 2 hearings. Pamela, for annexations. Two annexation complaints and changes.
She's got both of them. Okay. Any comments for the good of the order? Commissioner Levin.
I'll keep this brief. I don't believe that political signs are, as Commissioner Ika said, visual clutter. I don't agree with that labeling whatsoever. And I think that the amount of signs that have been removed from the road, if there are 1 or 2 that are still up on random properties, I really don't think that's an issue. And I don't think it's appropriate for the city to be spending time and resources going after those.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Thought.
I just wanted to say unrelated to signs, but in response to Lisa's report about the CFEC, I think I got the acronym right.
Sure hope so.
Yeah. That within the architectural community, we've been having a lot of conversations around spatial justice and the importance of that in ensuring equitable communities. And so I'm very happy to hear that we will have this kind of intersection between climate action, spatial justice, and planning, and how that can, I think, really positively affect our city. So thanks for the update.
Thanks, Commissioner Fox. Any other comments for the good of the order?
Yes.
Commissioner Ickes.
I am going to respond to Commissioner Levin because I understand that for a period where there's a few signs after the election, it's not really visual pollution, but I believe that is one reason why there is a restriction on the period of time in which you could put signs up. Because if there wasn't, we would have all these political signs up a lot longer, and they do seem to me to be causing a degree of visual pollution. And my main concern for having some enforcement of some kind or taking these signs down is the advantage that it gives to candidates who just keep it up and other candidates who abide by the rules and take their signs down. And I think most campaigns, try and get all their signs down. Some are left
really hard. I tried.
It is hard, and it is very hard to do. But I also think that even if it's unintentional, that there is an advantage given to those general election candidates who won in primaries or who ran in primaries and keep their signs up. And we should not, and as I said, I've seen it for both Democrats and Republicans. So I think that's another reason for trying to have some level of enforcement.
Okay. Point
or at least notice or reminding people they should be taking those signs down.
If you see one of mine, just rip it out. got full.
Well, that's one of the questions is whether or not an individual who sees a sign that should have been taken down should go take it down themselves, because
I wouldn't.
you are
do that.
entering people's
Absolutely.
personal property. And I think
Yeah.
that's why I think it's somewhat up to the city as a rather than individuals to go enter someone's personal property and take something down. If the city's got rules, then it's up to the city, and we would turn to the city to try and have some level of enforcement.
Okay. Any other comments for the good of the order? Commissioner Levin.
Political signs are temporary signs and fall under the temporary sign code, and they can be up for more than 60 days.
All right, I don't believe that's the case.
I think they have a special little rule for our political signs, but
I brought up the issue when we were talking about signs and political signs during a prior planning commission meeting, in which I proposed the idea that political signs should be allowed in the public right of way as a result of landscape strips during a specific time period. It was noted by city staff that political signs are the same as temporary signs of any other kind, including real estate signs.
okay.
Real estate is marketed for more than 60 days on a regular basis. Those signs are allowed on those properties without any contention, and they are not called visual clutter.
So maybe
Well,
if state
maybe we
has a
should-
certain rule and the city has a different rule, but maybe Lisa, you can come back to us at the next meeting with clarification because
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be nice to know what the rule is.
Yeah. Sorry, I
okay.
don't know the answer today, but we will follow up and we'll get you the right answer.
That sounds great. Then we'll all have the same information. Any other comments for the good of the order? You guys are wonderful. We'll see you June 21st. The meeting is adjourned. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.